Let's start from the top. I'm your host, Thingy Man. This is the Mafia Championship podcast. As you probably all know, the tournament consists of 3 stages: the qualifiers, the semifinals, and the finale. And the qualifiers are over, the 11 qualifier games. And actually, later today, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Alyssa will start the reveal and tell us all who the jury has decided will be advancing to the semifinals. And the jury, of course, consists of last year's finalists, as is tradition has been for the last 5 seasons or so, or I think actually since season 2. So that's very exciting. We already have 22 candidates moving on, and the jury has picked 23 additional people to move on from the games. Maybe you're looking at one of those people right here in the podcast. Who knows? I don't know, so I'm excited to find out myself. And yeah, then it's 3 semifinal games, and from there it's the finale. And we're all playing this game to find out who's the best at lying and or catching liars. And some of the people who's made that attempt are here with us today. We will be talking about Game 10 today. This season has been a season of firsts and records, both positive and negative ones. On the positive side of things, Game 6 was the first ever game to feature a town sweep, and Game 7 saw Silver Keith receive the first perfect point score in Champs history as the final winning Mafia member. On the negative side of things, or more negative side of things, we had a cheater lead to Game 8 being cancelled for the first time. And we had a total of 6 subs in Game 10, this game, which I'm pretty sure has to be close to a record, considering that's more than a third of the game. I would be surprised if it isn't, or at least tied for the record. Interestingly, though, Game 10 did manage to get off to a good start with a Mafia lynched on day 1. And we did see some interesting play and also some excellent play, and of course some awesome and nice, good all-around players. So I'm very much looking forward to this podcast and to talking about this game today, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, because I can see that the chat is already jumping and pumping. We have a lot of people there. We have Beautiful Shy representing from the game as well. We have a General Handkerchief also there, the host and former winner, champion. So we have a good chat going. As always, feel very free to ask questions to the podcast guests if you want, or to me, or whoever. In case you forgot, let me just give you guys a quick update on how the post-game vote ended for Game 10. In third, or actually tied for third, we had 3 people tied for third with 20 points each. Aquilla, who's with us here today, Echks, who is also with us here today, and Orange P47, who unfortunately isn't on the podcast. Maybe he's out there watching, I don't know. In second place, we have Jack of Hearts 2005 with 24 points. He's also here. He's right here on my right side. We also have Tim's Up to Nothing with us with 69 points. Cue the nice in the chat. Also quite a high, excellent score. It seems that Tim was indeed up to something, and it wasn't all good stuff. Not as far as the town is concerned, at least. Yeah, we have a lot of nice in chat. That's awesome. Let's get to introducing these guys, and let's get to know them, right? Because you've seen them all post, and for most of you, you've probably seen these guys for the first time, maybe with the exception of Aquilla, who's, of course, from Daily Mafia. But other than him, I assume most of these faces are new to you. They're at least new to me. So it's fun to see all these guys. And we have a big podcast here. This is like tied for the biggest podcast we've had. We don't have room anymore. At least not if you want to have the chat going as well. And I think that's fun. I like to have the chat here as well. But yeah, let's start with the guy who advanced, one of the guys who advanced from this game with 69 points. Tim's Up to Nothing, representing Civ Fanatics, his first time playing in the Mafia Championship, and I believe also he can confirm or deny his first time playing on Mafia Universe. But at least it's one.
I played a practice game.
You played a practice game. All right,
I did play a practice game.
That's right. But you hadn't played on Mafia Universe before being selected as representative, right?
That's true.
And you're also the only Mafia member with us here on the podcast. So that's exciting. I'm very thankful that you wanted to appear. But please tell us more about yourself and like how you came to be representing Civ Fanatics.
Well, I actually started playing Mafia in November.
Wow.
Like last November. I'm now over 10 games, so I'm making progress. And I think I was selected kind of as punishment for being the thread flutter at CFC. They pretty much just said, you need to go to Mafia Universe and play in champs and see if that straightens you out a little bit. And I started this game by introducing myself to my fellow wolves as, look, I'm just going to flood the thread. That's how it's going to go. You deal with it however you want to deal with it, but that's pretty much what's going to happen here. And it worked.
It did work. As Nutella's reminding me here in chat, Tim is also the only person who has played all 3 positions or roles in this year's setup. VT in the practice game, Mafia in this game that we're talking about today, and Jack of all trades in the Spec Chat War game. So that's an interesting statistic.
I've seen it all.
Yeah, so we already have a good experience with the setup, so I'm sure that'll serve you well in the semifinals. I certainly hope it does. Moving on to Jack of Hearts 2005, who is not a strange face to at least MU regulars. He's represented before, and he's played games before on MU and other sites as well. Not only being on his home site, HeroClix Realms, from where he was recruited, but I believe also playing a lot on the Syndicate, if I'm not mistaken, which is also a nice group of people. He subbed in here for Hyde on night 1. He's actually one of 3 people who subbed in on night 1 who's with us here today. So a lot of night 1 subs representing today. And he was the final mis-elimination of the game. But he did place a vote correctly on Tim, who we just talked about. Please tell us more about yourself, Jack.
Hey, I'm Jack. Like Thingy said, I play for HC Realms and the Syndicate, and every once in a while on Mafia Universe. I actually was about to quit Mafia right before my champs game, the first champs game 4 or 5 years ago that I play on Mafia Universe. But I got beat there too in Lilo by my friend Slooney, who plays for Mafia the Syndicate. And he was like, well, come play with us. And so I did, and went back to HE Realms and been playing on all 3 sets since.
Awesome. It's good to have you, Jack. Let's talk about another person who's subbed in on night 1. Let's stick to those guys. We have Aquilla here, a well-known face. Also a fellow staff member, Green, representing Daily Mafia. I guess these days also representing Mafia Universe. I don't know what he'd say himself. But he subbed in for RBH PE on night 1. He was the final night kill of the game. So I guess the Mafia didn't trust him to be in the game if they wanted to clinch the victory. At least they decided he was the better person to kill. Subbed in, did well. It's good to have you here, Aquilla. Please introduce yourself to the podcast.
Yeah, so as most of you guys know, I'm Aquilla. A lot of you guys know my faces from various video sites such as Daily Mafia and All Stars, which I actually technically represented All Stars this time, not Daily Mafia. And it's actually kind of a funny story because when we were doing the All Stars nominations, nobody was speaking about it whatsoever. So eventually it was down to me and Colin were the only ones talking about it whatsoever. So it's like, okay, well, you take the representation, I'll back you up. And then the only reason I even played at all was Manti didn't let me host as a backup. So it was like, well, screw it. I guess I'll just leave Champs back and be an emergency backup. And Lissa talked with me 8 different times before I ended up subbing in for this instance.
I guess because what happens is when someone when we suspect that someone needs to be subbed, we start approaching people. So we have the subs lined up, and I guess you were approached all those times, and maybe you weren't right around when the subbing needed to happen, or the subbing wasn't required anyway. So that's funny that you were approached so many times. But finally you were called upon. Let's move on to Forgot to Flush or FTFlush. I'm being told his face is familiar to a lot of people as well, so I'm assuming you also played Video Mafia, perhaps. Representing Pokemon Showdown, subbed in for Schiavetto night 1. I believe I also saw his name in the chat, so he's maybe here. Mis-eliminated quite controversially on day 2, and we'll get to that in the podcast. But please introduce yourself to the chat.
All right, hi, I'm FTF from PS, as you said. Started playing Mafia in 2017, and I represented us last year. And this year I decided, I wanted to be the backup. I didn't want to represent again, but something came up and I needed to sub in. And then, like you said, day 2, got voted out, and it was something. Yeah.
It was something. That's a quote for the article tomorrow. FTFlush, it was something. Actually, interesting. I don't play a lot of Mafia, so actually the last Mafia game that I actually played with FTFlush because he also subbed into that game. I believe you were Mafia
The
in that
outside
game.
game, yeah.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
Diablo. Yeah, exactly. A game hosted by
Right.
Manti. So thanks for subbing into that.
No problem.
Moving on to Echks. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You can correct me if I'm not. Representing Hypixel. Playing, I believe, at least in the Mafia Championship for the first time. I'm not sure how much experience. Maybe also the first time Mafia Universe, but you can clear that up for the chat if not. And Kill Night 4 here did a good job. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I came from Hypixel. I started playing Mafia in early 2017 and have played in most of the games on Hypixel since then. I have played one game on Mafia Universe, but it was just a game with mostly Hypixel players that we decided to host on this site. Yeah.
Yeah, so quite new. So it'll be interesting to maybe hear the perspective of someone newer to MU compared to the other players. Because in this podcast we do have a lot of people who've played games before on Mafia Universe before this. I think actually you and Tim are the only exceptions to that. This is of course a common occurrence as we go on through the seasons because more and more people have just played on MU. So I guess it's hard to find those that real new blood out there, at least a new blood in terms of MU and the championship. And I'm always very excited to get that. So I'm also excited to have you represented here on the podcast.
I'm also the only person in this podcast without legs.
Yeah. Rip X-Lex. We have Bimps with us today. Bimps. No, Bimps, come on. Bimps from Everybody Edits. Also a subbed in for Anjit on day 2. Bimps is quite well known for a controversial vigilante play back in his original season, where he shot Benny on the first night, who most people perceive to not be a good shot. Benny was pity advanced, I believe, so that was good for Benny. But this time, much less controversial appearance, more experienced. Bimps was coming into this. Pleasure to have you join us here as well, Bimps. Please introduce yourself.
I'm the best. I'm great. I'm epic. I'm good. I wanted to play. Then Anja stole it from me. And then he left. So I ended up playing, you know? I'm the best. And I'm the best Mafia player. And I won because I'm part of the Scum team.
Oh, yeah, that's something we didn't reveal to you guys. Bimps is always Scum.
It's an honorary thing.
We're gonna be looking for people that aren't Scum. I'm always Scum.
Excellent. Thanks, Bimps.
Best.
Bimps is the best. Bimps is very modest, as Beautiful Shy says.
Hell yeah.
It will be exciting to get Bimps' takes throughout this podcast. Before we move on to the last person, I have to say that I usually borrow someone's Zoom account for this. And when I logged in, it said that they were currently holding a meeting. So I didn't want to borrow the account in case they were actually holding a meeting. So I'm using my own, which has a 40-minute limit. So we will have to restart this at some point. Unless, I don't know.
It just said that it upgraded to unlimited minutes. So.
Oh, it's good?
It gave me a pop-up and said unlimited minutes. So,
oh, awesome. Yeah, because I heard that because of the corona, it did that. But I wasn't sure if maybe they'd gone back on that or changed it. All right, well, that's awesome. Thanks, Bimps. Moving on to the last person, the last guest here with us today. We have, I'm not sure what to call that sign, actually, but we have a sign, Rosen, representing Sufficient Velocity. He was the jack of all trades, who got killed night 1, after claiming that he was jack of all trades on day 1. We will also be digging into that. He is previously known as Klep, if that's pronounced right, I don't know. Representing Azureland back in Season 4. But here, with a new name and a new game. Please introduce yourself, Rosen.
All right. Hi, I'm Rosen. The hyphen is not pronounced, so you guys can ignore that. This is actually my 3rd time playing in the championship. I represented Azureland in Season 6 as well. I was Scum in that game, and then Pawn kicked my ass, so there was that, and then really, I think okay, I lost my train of thought, but
I guess
I think-
Pawn kicking your ass got you over to sufficient velocity, or how did that?
Yeah, pretty much. He kicked my ass in the season 6 game, and then he was DMing me at one point saying like, "Oh, you should come over to Sufficient Velocity, try some games there." And at that point, Azurland was, in terms of Mafia, pretty much dead. So I figured, all right, why not? We'll give it a shot. And I enjoyed it over there a lot more than I ever did on Azurland. And really switching over really reignited my interest in the game. And that's pretty much why I'm here today.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that. So you're not the only person here. Jack of Hearts, another example, like players, and Flush has also played on several sites in Aquilla. I mean, mostly everyone here who's played before the championship have also played on other sites and with other communities, and I'm always excited about that. I mean, especially because from what I'm gathering here, and for some of the other people, like it sometimes reignites your interest in the game. You get more friends, you play in a different way, and you just get rehyped. And I love that, because otherwise we'd have people not playing the game anymore. Is what I'm choosing to take from this. So yeah, I'm just very happy to see that. All right, so those are the introductions out of the way. Is this the Town of Salem podcast? No, it's not the Town of Salem podcast. It's the Mafia Championship podcast.
It is. Don't worry. Yeah, it is. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I'm apparently mistaken. It is the Town of Salem podcast. All right, so we already touched on this, and let's just jump straight to the agenda, because we have a lot of people and not a lot of time. And again, remember, those in chat, if you have questions, do feel free to ask them, and I'll bring up the questions. Actually, I see a question right here. I think that's Allenberg from MU asking, who got the better gamer chair, Echks or Thingy? I vote Echks. I'm a bit disappointed by that, Allenberg. My fellow Dane letting me down. Come on, that's good. That's like a Formula One gamer chair. That's dope stuff.
I have the support of the chat.
Yeah, it seems so. I'm losing this one. Not getting a single vote.
You got no shot. You just pack that in.
Thingy chair is trying too hard. Yeah, all right. I lost this. All right, I will take no more questions from chat. I'm not satisfied with this. All right, so let's move on to the
2 chairs.
Oh, you have 2 chairs. Oh, that's a small chair.
This is actually what it's like playing with Bimps.
Yeah, and I mean, we may get some subs during this podcast. I imagine someone will have to sub out, and we'll have to let some other people join instead.
Yep. Wouldn't be Game 10 without it.
Wouldn't be Game 10 without it. And speaking of, that is, of course, the first topic on our agenda, the abnormally large amount of subs. 6 subs, I do believe. Orange in the game dubbed the game the Ship of Theseus. Which, to those who don't know, is a thought experiment that raises the question of whether an object that has had all of its components replaced remains fundamentally the same object. I would argue it doesn't. It's not good for game integrity to have subs, because like the players are what makes the game. The players determine the dynamic. And the reason we play Mafia and stay interested in it is because each game is something different. Even if we're playing the same setup over and over, it's something different because the meta evolves or the dynamics evolve, etc., etc. It's always at least a bit different, and a lot of times it's just very different. So I would argue, of course, it isn't the same game, but it is the best we can do under the circumstances, I believe. But I'm curious to get your perspectives on this. I guess I'll start with the non-subs, so those people who didn't sub in, because I'm curious to get your perspective on having so many subs. How do you handle those slots? What did you feel about it? And there's also a rule that you can't talk about subs, and that might be frustrating, especially came with a lot of subs, because like, how can I not? This is insane. How can we not talk about this? But I'm curious to get your perspectives on it, if you have any.
I actually did talk about the subs. I don't know any rules. I just kind of go with what I got, and I threw shade at the subs hard.
I guess I should specify. You can talk about the slots. You can talk about I think all the wolves subbed out, or I think I don't buy. I think this person has to be a wolf because the person subbed out. The person was feeling pressure, but you can't talk about stuff like that.
I didn't cheat, but I did run hard on the wolfing. Got a lot better night one when these guys showed up.
Yeah,
I make everything better.
I think the wolves got a lot better night one. Must have been Jack.
Yeah, get better.
Yeah, I'm kind of a wolf regardless of my alignment, so.
No.
Oh, shit. You know who you're talking to.
This will be an interesting podcast. Let's get some thoughts from the people, because I guess we have a majority maybe of people who actually subbed in. So let's get your thoughts. Like, how was it to sub into this game, and what are your strategies to cope, or at least in this instance, like how were you going about it? Like, were you reading the entire game before you posted anything? Were you skimming? Were you posting first, or like how did you approach it?
I wanted to sub. Anjit said, "Hey, sub in for me," and I'm like, "Shit, okay, that's it, bastard, put it all on me." Oh, and I wasn't reading the thread at all, so that was fun. I mean, why would I read a game that I'm not in? It's not relevant if I'm not in it, you know? It's not even a game, is it? Can't even call it Mafia.
It's not even a game if you're not in it.
It's not.
Yeah.
What can I say? Bimps,
I'm glad it turned into a game. I'm glad we actually managed to turn this into a game.
I know, you finally got a game this season.
Yeah. I'm curious, Flush and Jack of Hearts. What were your strategies? Had you read the game before subbing in? So I guess Jack's saying no. So you hadn't read the game. So
my strategy when I sub in, or when I just get behind because of real life or whatever, is to kind of, I'm doing two things at once. I'm talking to people in real time, and then I'm going back on my own and posting stuff that's like not to anybody, not about anything that's going on, but it's my reactions through it. And it helps me get my thoughts kind of out there, but it's mostly so that other people can look at me and be like, this is what Jack would be thinking if he had been caught up, if he had been in the game. Hopefully to be able to use that to be like, okay, Jack is town. This is a town mindset. If I grab huge chunks of stuff and be like, this is why I think whatever, then you don't get to see my mindset afterwards. You don't know if I made that up. But if I'm going piece by piece, hopefully you can see like, yeah, this mindset makes sense all the way through.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's. All, but...
I see the value to that. I think that's a good thought process to have about it. How did you approach it, Flush? Similarly or differently?
Well, for me, I was kind of skimming the thread. Like, I wasn't reading it, like, very actively because I wasn't expecting to sub in. And then when I got the news, it was kind of like a frenzy for me because then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have to catch up now and I have to really figure out what's going on. And I don't know if you read the day one, but it was very messy. And I had to go back and reread things twice, trying to make sense of what was going on. And I guess we'll talk about that later, like all the JoH stuff. But yeah, for me, it was just very overwhelming trying to get a handle of what was happening.
Yeah. We have a question for you, Flush. Why Courier New?
Well, every single post I make is in Times New Roman because when I first started playing on PS, there was an option to change your post to Times New Roman. So I did it, and then nobody ever said anything, so I just kept doing it. And that's it.
I guess that's
all.
There was an option to do it, so I did it.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Jack, you're also being asked, why did you choose hearts over spades, diamonds, or clubs?
This fucker just shot the moon.
Yeah, I got the screen name in like 2001 because my graduation class is 2005. And I thought I was just damn good at the card game Hearts, which now I'm like, Spades is a better game.
Hearts.
But I thought King of Hearts made me sound like an asshole, so I chose Jack of Hearts. And then why change it?
Let's play Hearts right now.
Space is a better game.
All right. So going back to subs, I don't know for you, Rosen, or for you, Echks, how did you feel about because I guess it's something different from Tim. So let's compare the town and Mafia perspective on this. So for you as townies, how did you feel about the subs coming in, and like what are your thoughts? Because we can be honest now, because some things you can't say in the thread because it's not allowed per the rules. But what are your thoughts? Are you like rant wolves up the fuck out, or what were your thoughts, or like what are your thoughts on those slots having to sub out?
You want to go first, or should I go first?
You can go ahead.
So I didn't really draw any sort of alignment indication from the subs. The biggest change to my mindset was I went through day one with like a game with like 10, 12 players, and then suddenly 3 more players joined the game. So now I have 3 more people to keep track of. So the game just got harder. That was it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so for me, I think my perspective is a little different since obviously I died before any of the subs even started playing the game. So I never played with any of these people. So to me, at least, observing the game after that point, whenever all the subs came in, it felt completely different and it felt completely disconnected from the game that I had played. And honestly, that made it a lot harder for me to keep track of it as an observer versus probably anybody else who was actually in the game and got to play with those subs.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Like it changes the dynamics. So that's actually interesting that you have that perspective from someone not even in the game. So I'm curious if it felt the same for those in the game. Like was it just a different game at that point because so many new people were in it?
Well, all the low-hanging fruit, easy chops turned into these guys. So yeah, it was a lot different.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because as a map,
the low posters that I was counting on,
get eliminated.
Where'd they go?
Well, and I guess that's kudos, right? Because you still managed to get them chopped, at least a couple of them.
I got a couple of them eventually.
Yeah.
Don't get me.
Come on,
Too hard to
man.
contain.
Mine doesn't count though because it was on the last day.
That's
for the
right.
record.
You're the eventually.
That's interesting, right? That the game changes.
Laurentis
is in the house. Yeah, Laurentis was in the game. I believe Bust Beautiful Shy for max cred. Pingu subbed in, man. And I mean survived on the cred.
It's a good thing we couldn't talk about this because we're not supposed to talk about subs. But I thought Laurentis' sub out looked like super towny because like he seemed really upset that he had to sub out, and so I was like, oh yeah, that's a towny.
I actually kind of disagree because it almost came like really suddenly, so it almost was confirmed to me as a unrelated to the game sub out, so it didn't really matter to me.
Interesting. And that of course isn't the case.
Just because of how sudden his specific sub out was.
And that wasn't the case. But I guess that's interesting because people draw conclusions. So that's also what I wanted to hear. But a lot of times those conclusions are just wrong. And I think that's also why you shouldn't make those conclusions. Also because, and I guess this is what it boils down to, right? Because the subbed-in player can't defend against that. So it's a very unfair position to put them in.
Pengu pretty much didn't have to defend against it. He just disappeared.
He didn't play for 2 phases.
I still think we could have won that last day after you allowed it.
And we will get back to that as well.
People are donating because of me. By people, I mean people that I forced to join.
I will say this is an affiliate channel, and people can they could always follow. That has always been possible, but
they don't care. They're only here for me. Just being honest. I'm not joking.
You can of course donate, and no, you can't donate because I haven't set it up yet, so you can't donate. But you can subscribe actually to the channel, and I don't actually know how to view subscribes because I haven't even checked any of that yet. But if there's anyone who subscribed, thank you, and I'm sorry for not being aware of it. But let's talk about this game. It was a game characterized by interesting plays and interesting eliminations in cursive. at least the first 4 days. And I guess let's take it from the beginning, right? Can I donate to Bimps only? Sure. You can try.
Hell yeah. My OnlyFans.
Let's. I'm curious how many people are here for Bimps.
It's literally just the same person doing it.
It's literally just the same person. People who are from Bimps write EE for everybody edits. I'm curious to see how many supporters
I
are
don't
here.
talk about that game. Everybody edits. Yeah, the game you see, the game with blocks and stuff.
Everybody edits. It's an interesting game for a community where you play Mafia because usually you're not allowed to edit. Anyway, Rosen's day one play. We have to start there, right? Rosen.
Oh yeah.
He hard claims Jack of all trades. He doesn't do it right off the bat, but he does it at least in the first half of day one, I believe.
Right before the halfway point.
Right before the halfway point, and it's a pre-written post, I believe, also. And I have the post right here, actually. I'm not bringing it up on stream. He says, I hard claim Jack of all trades. I would like the other Jack of all trades to also hard claim. Here's your Rosen sponsored text wall to explain why it's a good idea. And he goes into like the healing track and emotion detection and how the game can evolve with the amount of clears and etc. And I guess actually it's best to maybe just let Rosen start this off by explaining his thought process and why this was a good idea. For context, I can say that he isn't the first Jack of all trades to claim on day one or do it out of his own free will, so to say, unpressured. DS, Darren Sanders, also did it in an early game. And that managed to be a successful game for the town. A very successful game. It was the town sweep. And I believe it ended with none of the two JoHs dying before the game ended. So it worked out there. I'm not sure if you were inspired by that, Rosen, or if you had already thought of this, or... Well, yeah, take it away. Explain more about this play.
Yeah, so I hadn't actually seen that game. I don't really read any of the other games beforehand, so this was something that I had really just come up with. And I kind of thought, like, just looking at mainly the game summaries for the games that were played at that point, I think it was 1 through 8 that were finished by the time Game 10 started, or something like that. And the first thought was really just, okay, a lot of the JoHs are dying within, like, the first, like, 2 or 3 cycles of the game. So I thought to myself that, okay, it seems like, at least in the qualifier matches, the JoHs aren't going to get to that point where their night actions become powerful enough to outweigh the day power of effectively the strategy that I put in place. So the whole crux of that strategy was to generate the 2 clears as soon as possible, and then just go from there. Use those first 3 days to try and get as much done as possible while the JoHs are still around.
And so I'm curious, what did the rest of you feel about this play from Rosen?
I immediately thought, there's a leader, he's dying. That was my take on it. Was this guy's trying to lead the town? He's dead. If I have to tap him twice, he's dead.
Yeah. Yeah, at that point, I was fully prepared to be dead by night 2, no matter what, because that was pretty much the whole point of it, that the 2 JoHs would mutually heal each other night 1 to guarantee that both of them stay alive through the second day, because that would significantly improve town's early game odds, at least. And by the time the odds would even out by, I want to say it was day 4, according to my math, there would be much more of a foundation that town could work with, even without the JoHs in play.
Yeah, having a leader that's a clear.
Mm-hmm.
Is
very
from my side, that was no good. I was like not with that at all.
I guess the counter side to this specific argument is that outing yourself day 1 can cause things to go iffy for if the coordination isn't good, and that is unfortunately what did end up happening.
Yeah,
so not necessarily your fault with it. It's more of what happened on the tail end that caused the play to end up not going so well.
I think the biggest problem with the play is that there are things that can happen on the town side that can screw it up. There's not really that much that the Mafia can do against it, but town can obviously try to overplay that strategy and it can fall through like that, which is what we saw.
And I know that you said you were aiming it specifically for the qualifiers, but I actually think that in the semis it might actually, or even the finals, it might turn out better because you don't have like the random subs that could potentially be a jack of all trades, or it's less likely to happen at least.
Right.
You don't have those people who may not know the meta. Like for instance, Jenny counterclaiming Onjits on it, and that just turned into a disaster. That sort of thing is just less likely to happen with more experienced and the players like that.
The other thing about it that might make it more or less useful in semis is that you have to ask why, and I don't know necessarily. You have to ask why JoHs are falling night 1, night 2, night 3, and all these other games. And is it because the players are maybe like at the lower tier? And sorry to anybody watching that's that player, because I didn't watch all those games. I don't know. But if they're a lower tier player that says something that gives away that they're the JoHs and they haven't used their JoHs to clear themselves, they haven't used that clear to advance the game, but they gave themselves away to the Wolves and the Wolves killed them. Maybe that's less likely to happen in semis.
Yeah, and that's what I had talked about in my post-game write-up, that my biggest thought to the JoHs dying in the earlier cycles was that, okay, maybe these people were soft claiming early and the Wolves were picking up on that. And I think that would be obviously much less likely to happen in a semifinals or finals setting, which is why I wanted to employ the strategy in qualifiers so that we can just prevent the soft claims from happening altogether, and then we can move from there.
Yeah, basically, you're guaranteeing some value out of doing this, other than soft claiming, getting sniped by the Wolves, not being able to coordinate or achieve anything, as it did occur in other games. But like Sunfan says, it really seemed like the JoHs were sniped at a higher than rand rate, and it really wasn't because of roll reads. And I think I have to agree somewhat with that, having watched some of the games. I think there was also just a coincidence at play here.
It's a good call out.
I think we need a larger sample size to really tell.
Yeah, whenever I came up with the strategy, it was a sample size of, I believe, 6 games. 6 or 7 games, because what was it, G7 that
Game 8
prematurely.
Game 8.
So there really wasn't a lot to go off of. So it wasn't like a perfect, like, okay, this is objectively better. It's mainly just to be there, like, okay, this sacrifices the late game power of the JoHs in exchange for better early game power.
And honestly, I think that overall is worth it because generally speaking, there's so many chances for the jack of all trades to just not be able to get a late game anyway.
Yeah, even just by pure coincidence, it's exponentially harder for a JoH to make it to late game to where that power is actually useful. Because the longer they live, the more potential there is for roll reads to actually come into play.
But also another side of this, and I guess Tim, you like sort of touched on it, because what you fear as Mafia there, I presume, is also like you're seeing a town leader or the potential for a town leader, right? And he's clearing himself because he should be clear, right? Because he's claiming out of the blue. Like, it would be very foolish for a Mafia to do this, and you just have to trust it. And if he doesn't die, and you see the JoHs die, well, then you have an easy kill later on. So you just have to assume that's town, and he can lead the town. And I guess, is that like a strategy, or is where you're also going for that, Rosen? Like, because it can be dangerous. There are pros and cons to having a clear town leader on day one. The pro, of course, is that, well, you have a trusted voice, and if he has a read, he can just tell everyone, well, follow this read, because you know you're following a town voice. You know you're following a town case, at least, right? But you also sort of distort the game potentially. And well, this wasn't what happened here from what I know, right? But it's just interesting to talk about this theoretically, right? And the merits of JoH claiming and having a clear town leader is that if you choose to do that, then you distort the game by not having people interact and making cases and seeing natural wagons form, right? So I'm curious, was that a fear of yours, Tim, that Rosen was just going to call the shots on that day?
Yeah, he had a good voice. He had better reads than a lot of people, and he was going to get listened to. And yeah, he had to go, man. I mean, he just had to go.
Always enjoy being a threat.
With all the low posters and the subs coming and all of that other stuff coming in the smaller crowd that we had on day one, yeah, he was the leader of the town, and killing him created chaos in the town, and I was all for that.
But then, of course, we have Jenny claiming, and then we have Anjit claiming, and we have the fake claim. So I guess that's like a downside, I guess, in this specific case.
Yeah, that
I like
was
the idea. It's just it didn't turn out well.
The idea is good, but the way it played out was not. I think.
Yeah, I think the situation is completely okay for Anjit to fake claim there, as long as if the real Jack of all trades does end up claiming, you need to full rescind that, so there's no murk in the water. But he didn't, and that actually put us way behind in terms of the intended play.
Did Jenny heal Anjit? Is that what happened?
No, I think Jenny
don't
cracked
remember.
night one.
I think she claimed healing day 2. So
yeah.
The thing about fake claims and soft this and all this trickiness, the wolves always see that. The only people you're ever going to confuse is the town.
It's the town.
Yeah.
The town was totally lost, had no idea what was going on. They're all running different directions, reading different things from Anjit, reading different things from Jenny, trying to decide if Rosen's really the wolf. And I went into night one and just read everything, and it was like, okay, this is really crystal clear, and Rosen, you're dead.
And like my thoughts on this, Mr. Jaupa is saying Anjit through the game, and I want to talk more about this. But I think my general philosophy is this: don't make the game about yourself. You have to let the game still be a game for the other players to be in. If you make the game about yourself, you're distorting the game so much, and everything just relies on what you're doing. So if you're gonna make a play, make it a play that doesn't have the potential to have such a huge impact on the game. I'm not necessarily saying this is the case here. Bimps is saying it was a bad play, and I'm not sure if I guess if Bimps says an FPS play is a bad play, then I guess it is a bad play because Bimps seems.
It turned out to be a really bad play because I was saying things just like what you just said in the game, and most of my town cred was built on beating up on fancy players.
Yeah.
I was the guy beating up the fancy players, so clearly I must be town. Everybody loves me, and you're all dead.
And I would have agreed with that read as well, because generally the people who seem to be genuinely upset with fancy play are actually town, in my experience.
Yeah.
More commonly than not, yeah.
Yeah. So
because fancy play is what wolves are happy about because it gets them through the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like usually I go by the philosophy of fancy play is generally not good unless you can find legitimate mechanical advantage to it, which is why I did what I did, because I thought there was legitimate mechanical advantage to it.
But let's turn this around, because I do want to... Was it a bad play? Does everyone here agree that Anjit's play was bad? Because, I mean, because it presumes that Jenny is right for suspecting one of the first two claims. And do you agree with that? Like in Jenny's position, would you suspect those two? Of course, you know one of the claims is fake, but do you expect that to be a mafia?
No, I like the beginning of Anjit's play. I just think he should have been clearer about a resend. I think the idea of a vanilla town being the second claim in Rosen's world is actually very, very, very good. I think it can cause night 3 to be, oh hey look, we have a dead VT instead of a jack of all trades, who has hidden the whole time and possibly can clear themselves and can get actions on. So the idea of it is very, very, very good.
Yeah, good idea, but poor execution, I would say.
And it depends on the player too.
In the subsequent
as
game,
long as the VT who's claiming is willing to rescind if the real jack of all trades is wanting to claim.
But
you just have to be prepared to rescind.
He didn't at all. He kept shitposting.
Well,
It's in his
in
blood.
the subsequent game that I played when I was
We're
the
talking
JoH,
the philosophy, not actually what happened.
in the subsequent game where I played as the JoH,
he was town.
all of the first claims were Vanilla Town. I never claimed until I had to because they were going to kill me. And the JoHs just kind of rode along with all of these people. I think there were three people that claimed before I did. One was a wolf, but the first two people that claimed were both Vanilla Town, and one of them did eat a bullet.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking from all of the games, I believe, and chat, or you can correct me if you know this to be wrong, but out of people who claimed not out of pressure, there's only been one Mafia who's done that so far, which was Captain Video. Everyone else has been Town when claiming.
Claimed period or claimed JoH?
Claimed JoH, not under
It was
pressure.
Game 6. Wasn't there somebody in Game 6 who's Mafia?
No, I do remember one instance. I don't remember which game it was, but there was a Jack of all trades CC that got a Jack of all trades killed. Like a Mafia doing it that got a Jack of all trades lynched. Or eliminated,
yeah,
excuse me.
I think that was G7.
People saying Mellow Eslo claimed in Game 6, but wasn't that under pressure? And some people also saying Captain Video was also sort of under pressure, but I would not characterize it the same. He was like maybe in in one of the next two in the firing line, but he wasn't under pressure. Like, I'm not talking about people who are like the top vote getter that day, and of course they're gonna claim. I mean, that should always be the optimal strategy for Mafia. At least 9 out of 10 times you have to claim there. I don't know why you just go down without doing anything to try and save yourself, right?
I'd try.
Yeah. And Tony's saying that he agrees with Aquilla and Rosen's takes here. Have to find an Everlasting Winter Place. I'm not sure who that is, but he says Anja should either have kept hard claimed until day 2+ or full rescinded day 1, not softing. And I do agree with that take. Like, it should have been one of those two.
Yeah. The between caused Tim to be able to see it and just snipe right through it. Like, the wishy-washy play is what caused it to end up returning poorly.
Yeah, the town was confused, the JoHs were confused, and I figured it out. And that's the bad outcome.
Yeah.
That right there is the bad outcome.
And we happened to hit the worst outcome, but that doesn't necessarily mean the play idea was bad.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you don't necessarily can judge things by their results.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Everlasting
really,
is... Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
It's really just fancy plays within fancy plays at that point, and that's where it gets all convoluted for everyone.
Yes. Everlasting is a Pawn Lush, by the way. So shout out to Pawn in the chat. But yeah, I have to say, Tim, I'm very impressed that you've only played 10 games. You seem to have gotten a very good grasp of the game already. Like, I think your point about Mafia just seeing a clearer picture, a bigger picture, is so true. And I think it's very valuable for towns who want to FPS to be aware of that.
Don't soft.
Like,
when you soft, the Mafia is studying everything, and we've got 3 sets of eyes.
Yeah, Mafia have an inherent advantage because they don't have to find scum. They already know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're looking for is ways for them to get ahead, which includes sniping off those power rolls.
I have a subtle brag here, a humble brag. In vanilla games, vanilla cup games, games where there is only one special role, and that is the cup. I have only gone in all the games I've played as Mafia. There's only been 2 nights where it didn't hit a cup before all cups were dead in those games. And that's because vanilla towns, they give so much information away. They give so much free information away. It's insane. Like, if you really look for it, they just... It's also clear, like, who the cops are just by process of elimination. So that's just something that people can generally improve on. I want to give a quick shout out. Let me find the people, because there have been a few people cheering in chat. So of course want to say thanks to those. Bill Brand, cheering. Bimps Goat, thanks for that. Cut the line, cheering a few times. I'm paying attention to the stream. Wait, no, I'm just making Bimps jokes, I guess. Bimps, you're making me money here. Shade Flare, cheering 100. Beard Ligger, cheering 100 for Bimp. Bimp, you're a money maker here. I need to have you on more streams.
Get that money. I'm down.
I guess it's not a game if Bimp's not in it, and it's not a stream if Bimps isn't in it.
Yeah. Now you're getting
Vance Bimps. Overrule that jury. Overrule that jury.
Wait,
Hell
Tim,
yeah.
are you saying that the jury couldn't think of advancing Bimps? What are you saying, Tim?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I've been pushing the jury for weeks to advance Bimps. Bimps is my guy.
Hell yeah.
I mean,
Honorary
I
wolf.
mean, the
yes.
semifinals will be 100% more awesome if they advance.
Gotta
There you go.
gotta make the schmoves, you know.
I mean, the jury technically can decide their own advancement criteria, and if entertainment value is one of them, there are more people in the mix here.
Hell yeah.
Mac is on the jury.
Mac is on the
Good
jury.
chat.
He's
Good
on the
chat.
jury.
Just call the season for Bimps right now, Amy says. Who needs the rest of the rounds?
Everyone in
Bimp
chat.
Hortons. Advanced Armin. All the memes are coming out. All right, let's get serious for a second here. Let's move on. Let's just because we've been talking about the JoH claims here. I'm actually curious because I haven't been talking to a lot of the players about this. I've talked about this preseason, and now that the 11 qualifiers over, the sample size, to be clear, is worth nothing. We've had 2 town wins, right, and 1 call game,
Yeah.
and the rest were Mafia wins. But statistically, this isn't actually that significant. It can actually still very reasonably likely be a 50-50 setup. We don't know. And then, of course, there's the factor that this is championship context, where many of the players haven't played with each other. So you also have to factor that in. And unlike a popular belief, we don't make these setups more pro-town to weigh up for that. We try to make them balanced in a normal MU context. So that is the goal. Some people have a different belief, but that isn't actually the case. We try to make them games that would be 50-50 if just played regularly on MU. This time, we didn't test it many times. I think we only tested a couple of times before the season started.
Yeah, we started late on that.
We started late on that. We're going to improve that. That is a promise for next year. As soon as the season's over, we're going to start testing setups. Or at least going to start discussing setups. So that is a promise.
I like this setup, by the way.
I really do like this setup. I think it is very advanced towards the best team is going to win a majority of the time.
And that is, I think that is one of the, like,
hard.
there's a lot of criteria for these setups, but the one thing we want to accomplish is that if you are, it should feel fair for both sides. It should feel like the best team does win, or it should feel like you weren't cheated out of a win, like that, like it wasn't stacked against you. And I think
this setup is stacked against everybody.
Yeah.
I've played all 3 spots. It's hard. It is hard. Everything about it is hard. It's hard on the town. It's hard on the JoHs. It's hard on the Wolves. It's a great thing for champs because it's hard.
I mean, this is one of the setups that's gotten the best feedback, actually. A lot of people like Mountainous was very divisive, so a lot of people loved it and a lot of people hated it.
This is better than 5 and 6 for sure, though.
But
I was hating it when I was playing it.
As a representative of the Council of JoHs, I thought this setup was quite enjoyable to play, Amy says. This setup was much better than last year's, Lorenzo says. This is a good setup. I think it's slightly town-sided, but that's fine, Tony Stark says. And that's what I want to ask you guys. That was the question I was getting at here. A majority of people think this setup is pro-town. I'm curious if you guys agree with that. Or if you think it's balanced.
Maybe if everybody knows each other, like have been like a group of MU regulars could play the setup, and I think it'd be slightly down-sided. But any given group of players, like without necessarily knowing meta or pre-game stuff, I think it's a wash, really.
Yeah, I think in the champs context, it's pretty balanced. That's like how whenever I played in season 4, that was the Mountainous setup that
too.
In the context where people didn't know each other at all, Mountainous is generally more Mafia-sided because you can't use these meta arguments to kind of drive discussion in some capacity. Whereas if everybody knows each other, you can do that and just use meta as you see fit, and then the game goes from more Mafia-sided to more town-sided just because people know each other. So personally, I knew Caves from this game. I played with him last year, but beyond that, I didn't really know anybody, and I think in that context, I think the setup is fine the way it is.
From the Wolf side, the thing that's hard about this setup from the Wolf side, I got lucky because Rosen was the voice and he was the JoH, and I could kill him.
Yeah.
If you have these JoHs running around that you have to kill, you can't spend those kills on killing the town voices. And that makes it hard. Even if the JoHs don't really do anything, you still have to deal with killing them when you'd really rather be silencing people that are problems.
Unless you get lucky in game 1 and it's a day 1 lynch as a joke. Day
Well,
1
yeah.
elimination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that a lot. My apologies, guys.
I think something to be said about about Rosen's plan that didn't really get mentioned when we were talking about it in the thread is that Tim, you specifically mentioned that this setup made the game harder for everyone because it made the game more complicated. I think Rosen's setup does something to simplify things. Yeah. It takes out a lot of that difficulty from trying to understand everything. And I'm not sure if that's town-sided or scum-sided.
It's not either, because it simplifies it for the wolves as well.
Smooth brain-sided.
Simplification benefits whoever has the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently that was me.
It was. That's how it turned out.
Sorry,
yeah, pretty much.
Tim had the advantage of being
man,
good at the game.
those things that slip out.
I'd say at least in qualifiers that simplifying things is going to help the town because you're more likely to have a player come in and be like, I don't know what's going on. I've never played with people that post this much.
Just
use
simply
this
do
stuff.
numbers.
Tim can go tell his teammates anything they miss out, but a confused townie's alone. So they can use the simplification.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry guys, I'm a quick bit quiet here because I'm looking for some statistics on Mountainous, and I will proceed to pronounce it that way because I know it tilts GH as fuck. So
which I appreciate because he's the one who got us mentioning Mountainous at all. Anyway.
Yeah. So I hope everyone will pronounce it that way from now on, just to tilt.
Mountainous.
Mountainous.
Mountainous. I'm in.
But
I'm still not going to play it, but I'm in.
if it tilts somebody, I'm all for it.
But like Rice says in chess, he asks, doesn't this have the same numbers that Mountainous, but with 2 JoHs replacing VTs? And it does. And that is because we found out that Mountainous wasn't balanced, at least with those, not with that ratio. It was quite Mafia favorite, but there were some town wins. It wasn't unreasonable. So by adding just a bit of power, we guesstimated that it would be more balanced. But just for context, the stats for Mountainous is that, let's see. So in Championship, the Season 4, Town won 5 out of 14 games. That's not bad in a Championship. If you know the other seasons, that's not bad. But...
We're at 2 out of 10 right now, technically speaking.
2 out of 10.
Because we're discounting Game 8, the controversy.
I don't have the rest of the stats. That's annoying. Oh yeah, outside of the Championship, the 12-3 Mountainous setup has been run only 14 times, and Town winning just 2 of these. So the Town has won 7 out of 28 games. So there's 25%. More. So yeah. So still sample size, but the sample size does seem to say that it is the Mafia favorite. The jury's still out on how Mafia favorite is. But so we want to do something.
How did you let Aquilla beat you to that math, Echks?
Just waiting for it.
Still making that chart. Gotta show your work.
Aquilla had the right answer, but Echks is going to come up with a chart, guaranteed.
I'm not sure what this thing is.
I even had to sub in for it too. Actually, you had a day on me.
Mr. Frexy in chat asking for a friend. Is there sexuality for people who are only attracted to Bimp? Ever since I've been a young lad, I've been revolted by the sight of real-life women, but Bimp-like characters have really done the trick for me. Every Friday night since 2009, I've dressed up in traditional Bimp clothing and claimed Mafia powers. Am I alone? If not, what's it officially called? I thought Bimp sexual might work, but that sounds kind of stupid to me the more I think about it.
And yes, you are alone.
Yeah, you're the one.
You are 100% alone.
I mean, I maybe if Benny's masochistic, he might be into it as well. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
This is the wolf advantage of having Bimps in the game because it just goes to chaos. just at random intervals, mad chaos erupts, and it's like, yeah, okay, this works for me.
All right. Yeah. So we talked about the setup. I'm glad to get your guys' thoughts on that. Let's dig more into the game. Let's move on to the Draco Beer Night Kill.
Yes.
I like it.
Drago.
So Drago getting
I
a
really
night
like
kill.
that kill.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, because
Sorry,
what happened?
Drago.
For context, just to put this into context, Drago got killed over a claimed JoH, which was Jenny. So I just have to ask right here on the podcast, and you're the representative of the Wolf team here. I'm not sure. I also assume you were the leader of the Wolf team, perhaps.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah. So why did you do this, Tim? Explain yourself.
He was a voice. He was a voice. Jenny was a low poster. Even as a JoH, Jenny was a low poster. She wasn't going to lead anything. Drago was going to lead the town somewhere. It might not have been right. Maybe it would have been right, but one way or another, he was going to lead the town somewhere, and I really did not want the town going anywhere. So I had also just I had hammered Flush actually, and my Wolf partner at the time immediately said, "Man, I'm going to have to bust you because they're going to be all over you." And I told him it was nothing to worry about. Everything would be fine. They'd have something else to talk about in the morning, and they did. They all talked about
PGT.
Drago getting killed.
All right, so I just have to interrupt you because again I have to give you props, Tim, and I could give you a lot of props because you've already advanced. So I'm not, well, at this point I'm not influencing anyone because the jury's already made their picks. But I'm very impressed by that thought because that's power wolfing to me. Because so many mafia have that thought process. They do something that they think is scummy, and they talk about, oh, that was so scummy in Wolf Genocide, and they just go down, like they just give up. They just have this immediate thought, well, I'm out it. So I'm gonna put in like the least acceptable effort next morning, and they just slowly go down. So I like that thought process, being like, hell no. No, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not getting lynched
Nobody
here.
ever said a word about the fact that I'm the one that hammered Flush.
And
I mean, you prefaced it well too.
Flush's chop was horrible, really, for the town.
Yeah.
And
I tried after I started that. I tried.
Yeah,
you did.
The second I saw it, I was like, "What can I do? Though I'll just chop JDS instead." And I town-read him. So I don't know who was the.
He wasn't even in the
closest
game yet. It's like the
Well,
slot was
Caves,
literally
yeah.
somebody who had requested they would do something out.
It was Naves at the time. Who was the closest? Did any Wolves have any votes at that point?
No.
It was
None
only
did too.
Laurentis and
There was nowhere to go.
and neither one were getting
Laurentis
votes at that stage.
Yeah, Laurentis was solid town, and I was just being me.
Yeah, Laurentis was
And
probably like my fourth or fifth.
Yeah,
scum equity
the
at
only
that
reason
point.
the Laurentis slot even got that scum equity late was because Pengu subbed in and did nothing for 2 days.
Yeah.
Like that's the only reason I was considering that slot at all during the game. Either both Laurentis and Tim played day 1 and day 2, and the first half of day 3, remarkably.
I had a real hard time reading Laurentis because I know when I first subbed in, there was a couple things about him. I was like, okay, this looks scummy, and I pushed on it. I know he said he was like worried about me in some chat somewhere. But when I looked at his play, it's like, oh, whatever you do is going to be 6 hours off from end of day. So a 6 hour prior bus, a 6 hour prior catch, like it's really hard to tell that kind of stuff when it's so off from end of day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kept pointing out that he was completely out of sync with the thread, and nothing was his fault. And
right,
and
that worked.
While true, it also helps protect
him. He actually got accidentally caught hard bussing Shy, which helped. I mean that certainly
because Shy
helped.
was going to be going down anyway.
Yeah.
Just due to how day 1 worked out.
Yeah, well, he voted her early to just kind of distance, and then things blew up, and he couldn't get off because getting off at that point would have
almost
obviously
him
bad. So he was just stuck, and then since he had been stuck, we just worked it as okay. Well, that's good. You were stuck. Now you got all this town cred, and just kind of lay low.
It was real hard to see whether he was stuck because that had happened, whether he's stuck because he voted and then went to bed, and so that's why he never.
Yeah, it was a little bit of both.
GH says in chat, my view as the host was that the Wolves had set up for Laurentis to go deep and detached him at like Final 5 or Final 7 or something, which kind of got thrown out of whack by Laurentis subbing out, and then it didn't matter at all. But I'm curious to get your take, Tim, on whether that was the case.
Oh yeah, that was. I didn't bust Shy, and I was in trouble. At the end of day one, I thought I was probably in trouble because I had tried to defend Shy a little bit too hard, and I went into night one saying I'm going to get caught sooner or later for what I just did, so you have to go deep. And then as the play progressed, I got more and more tuned in with Orange, who had also, for different reasons, was not on Shy as early as some other people. And I could just put myself in any case that's made against me. Orange is going to read as, well, I did the same thing. So I just kind of moved in with Orange. And then I started feeling like, I can probably go the distance here. This is going to be all right. And then Pengu came in, and it was like, I'm going to have to go the distance here because I'm the one.
Yeah, every time Tim ended up doing something bad at end of day, like killing Draco, that was a good shot on you to give everybody something else to talk about. But then, okay, you had kind of a bad end of day one, but then me and Aquilla and Flush hit the thread, and
everything became about us.
To talk about.
Yeah, it seemed like, from my point of view, there was always something else to be talked about. Like day 2, it was Aquilla, Jack, and Flush. Day 3, it was the Drago kill. Day 4 would have been.
It started off okay, and then Fran.
Yeah, and then Fran happened, and then.
But I think that's a general lesson here, right? For people playing as Scum in future games, right? Don't play scared, because there are always other stuff to talk about. Don't be scared to make the moves that will advance your team, because one, you don't know what's going to happen. The town can always self-implode, and you making that move can set them up for a self-implosion, or other topics can just come up, and you have the power yourself to control and direct the threat. You have the power. You're a player like anyone else in the game. No one knows you're Mafia. You're just another voice.
If you are a thread flooding fool, you can direct what the town talks about, even if you're the wolf.
Yeah, that's like I kept telling myself that, like, if I had survived night 1, then Flush probably wouldn't have been the chop day 2. I think that I could have confidently led that somewhere else and potentially could have gotten a much better outcome for town in the long run.
That's distinctly possible.
Flush dying over Kame day 2 was so bad.
I mean, I wouldn't have killed Caves either, because to me, his play was a carbon copy of last year. So I had voted for him day 1 for the sole purpose of having the counter wagon, and the same thing kind of happened on day 1 and day 2. There wasn't ever really a wagon on him, that it just kind of existed for the sake of having a counter to the other person. So personally, I think if I were alive day 2, it would have gone in a completely different direction than what we saw.
Yeah, I think so too. That's why you died.
Yeah.
So I'm getting very distracted here, and I can see on our Zoom chat someone else getting distracted as well. Bimps, what the hell is happening? Bimps is putting on a lot of gloves on just his one hand. I'm not sure if he's about to reveal that he's actually a serial killer or something. Very dextery vibes here. And thanks to Mr. Frexy who donated some more bits or whatever it's called. Also asking Bimps if he wants to marry him. I'm not sure if he wants to rescind that offer now. But Bimps, you have been proposed to.
Yeah, I'll do it. It's good.
You'll do it.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Do we have an ordained minister anywhere?
Yeah, can anyone here do this? Lil Brand also cheering.
Man.
Lil Brand asking.
Have top ratings for this podcast.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Echks, chop your legs off.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are clipping.
I did it a week ago.
If GH
I make good on my bets the second I have to.
Yeah.
There you go.
I don't stall that shit.
This is terrible.
The makeup of
JH's
this
comment is great.
Yeah, the makeup of this podcast is game conversation interrupted every 15 minutes for duration 5 minutes by a what the fuck is Bimps doing interlude. That is indeed
that was
theme
the
of this-
game.
That was the
Yeah,
game.
That was
So
the
we're-
game.
We're just trying to
Yeah, don't
replicate the
worry
game here,
about
guys.
But we
Now
haven't
we
hit
just
our
need a
sub yet.
sub in.
Yeah. Yeah. GH, we need you to sub in.
Here,
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was a
sorry.
touch late. Maybe GH should have started, and I could have subbed in for him.
There you go.
I will say this is the slowest we've gone through the agenda ever.
There was an agenda.
I mean, it kind of helps us. I think we
You're
as a
welcome.
group have gotten a sense of camaraderie, which is what these games are intended to do. in
Yeah.
the first
For
So-
sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
The same thing happened with my game last year. Like we still have a server from game 11 last year that we are all just chilling because
Wow.
we had just a really chill game. So we decided,
Super
hey,
cute.
Wow, I love that. Who was in that game?
I know. Here, I can pull it up right now, actually. So, JDS was in it as well. Michelle was in there. Let's see. Chemist or Mist was also in there, and then Pon Lelouch were the main
Good game.
people that we really have seen this year as well.
Telio Hater, yeah.
Yeah,
That
Tayo
Michelle.
Hater, Tripped on Reality.
Chess.
was a
Yep.
great game.
Bon posted the whole list in the
Yeah,
Twitch chat. Yeah.
yeah, awesome.
Okay.
And GH, and I guess this says it right. GH, yes, I love the camaraderie. This was the third Champs qualifier I've hosted over the years. This one was by far my favorite because of the camaraderie. So that's that. I imagine that's awesome for you guys to hear as well, right?
I'm a friendly wolf.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that is also a strategy, right? Be the wolf that people would mind losing to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 When you said you had played as a wolf like 2 times before, I was like,
This
if I lose to this guy,
this was the second time.
if this is what you do on your second time, there's no shame in losing to that.
I mean, this is. I read some of these games after the fact and I skim them, so I know the roles and such. So I'm always biased and saying I could have gotten that person such. And as Tim, you're definitely one of the people where I'm like I wouldn't have gotten that. Like with your experience level, I've gone no, this guy's town. And with the way you played it and Powerwolf did, I think amazing game. Oh, I don't know.
It's not good.
Oh no, rest in peace, Tim.
I guess Tim's subbing out right now. I'm not sure this is
Yeah,
the most
we
awkward
need
sub
him
out
outta
ever.
Yep, there you go.
All right, you're good
I'm
again.
getting the your internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, no, we saw.
Yeah.
All good.
And I guess Bimps is doing his daily exercise right
Bimps is
now.
being Bimps.
Get my Wiimote.
That's just Bimps being Bimps right there.
Get my Wiimote.
Please
Why
do
do you
not
have a
discuss.
Wiimote nearby?
During the game, I actually called attention to Bimps whenever I was in
Best.
trouble. It was like, let's talk about Bimps for a while.
Because nobody knows what he's doing.
I like that part.
Let's get back to the game. We're back into the fifth. We're back into the 15 minutes, and then there'll be another Bimps interlude after that. Going back to day 2, because I want to talk about what's been called the Flush Chop. Flush just subbed in. A well-known MU regular, strong player, has played before, makes 184 posts. Super towny, at least the spec chat thinks. He gets mis-eliminated. Very controversial, at least from the perspective of spectator chat. From people here, there's actually only one person who voted him that wasn't Mafia. I will ask that person to reveal himself and explain himself. How could you vote Flush? You know who you are.
Jack.
Yeah, Jack.
Me?
Yeah.
And technically speaking, I think at least
I town read him 5 seconds into the day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right about the time I handed
leave
it,
the
Jack
net
was
with
saying,
Jack,
"Hey,
thanks."
wait a minute."
I was just
technically the flush is the flush chop is my fault, technically speaking, because it's like, oh, it's like we went through that point, and it seemed like he was making less impact than myself or Jack was at the time, which it's not necessarily always the case. But it also comes in like, and it actually give credit to Tim on this point as well, that he was basically saying the whole day that there's probably a wolf in the subs, and it definitely factored in a little bit. And when it blew up instantly, and me and him got into the argument about it, I realized I made my mistake, but at that point it was too late.
Yeah. That day too was one of the big reasons why I had Aquilla and Jack as the two wolves until literally Town had already lost, because at that point it looked to me like, okay, Aquilla is setting up to get Flush mischopped on day 2. And then is kind of backing away from that so that it doesn't immediately appear like he was at fault for really starting that and pushing that home, whereas
I understand that perspective.
Jack was inevitably the one that ended up setting that at the end of it. But then you both ended up Town, and it blew up in my face. So,
I think if me and Aquilla were placed in as scum right there, day 2 goes exactly the same.
Probably.
Oh yeah. That's exactly me and Jack of the Wolves. I think it goes exactly the same way.
Yeah.
X, I'm curious to get your perspective here. As someone who didn't vote Flush here, I don't know if you were Town.
Wagon at the time.
Yeah. A big part of the Flush train was essentially a lot of people noting that he seemed to have a lot of fluff posts, which in the context of having like 184 total posts throughout the day is like, and I tried to push against the Flush wagon a little bit because I came into the thread while the wagon was starting to pick up steam. So I was like, okay, what the fuck is happening with Flush? So I went in and ISO'd him, and I pulled out a couple posts where I was like, okay, look, these are Flush doing work. And the problem with those posts was that, largely speaking, they were really long posts describing his thought process, but his conclusions after the post didn't really change at all. So a lot of people still interpreted those as kind of fluffy.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing work to do work.
I thought Fluff did good work myself.
I agree with that. He really did what he needed to do day 2, which was go in, aggro hard, and just get shit done. And I think he did that effectively, and it was just unfortunate that he ended up chopped at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like I really wish we did do Kave, because Kave being Villa was like, it would have confirmed Flush as Villa, because there's no way he doesn't self-pres onto a Villa as a wolf.
Yeah.
So it was a big regret for me, and it honestly also kind of fueled my want for the rest of the game to try to get Kave out of the game, that slot out of the game.
Yeah, I was so sure that Kave was Town, and I mean, I don't know if my reasons were actually that good, but I was so sure he was, and there was one or two, maybe Echks wagons that popped up that I was just like, nah, this isn't good either. I wasn't all that sure on Flush, but I just hated everything else that got suggested.
And it also didn't help that the two wolves were Tim, who was starting to get really, really Town red throughout the course of day 2, and Laurentis, who had to bus on Shy, which almost everybody, especially Orange, was calling that to be very unlikely to be a wolf partner starting that.
Yeah, I suspected both of them a little bit day 2, but then like when Tim kind of like, I was like, yeah, come at me, blow up at me, yell at me or whatever, and he did. And I was like,
that's where I swapped on Tim day 2 myself.
I was like,
I had him in my PoE initially.
You asked, you asked.
No, I wanted that. but I saw it and I was like, I don't know if this is honest. I was like, does a townie feel like me, Aquilla, and Flush came in and they're like, oh yeah, we're big names.
I didn't give
the legends
that
thing
as well, because I initially went into it and I did an ISO of my slot because I wanted to see where my slot stood, and I actually read my slot and was like, if I didn't have a Town PM card, I would think I was a wolf, because my day 1 slot was very bad, especially with Shy.
Yeah.
Sunfan, what are you gonna do? Stab me? Last words of stabbing victim. Yeah.
This one, Greg.
I'm curious because actually, so to talk more about the Flush Lynch, and I also want to get Flush's own perspective on this, and I'm curious to get your perspective, Flush, on in your own perspective, why I'm assuming you think it was a bad mislim, or whether actually that is a question. Do you think it was bad for the Town to lynch there, or can you understand it? and if you can understand what could you have done differently, and I guess if you get miseliminated, like my philosophy is at least you have to take a lot of the blame on yourself. At least it's a two-way street. There are two parties to blame, and certainly you can do something.
3 if you count me.
Yeah, but I'm also I'm not sure what Bimps is showing there.
It's like a jar of some sort.
You have to look away from Bimps.
Yeah, look away from
against
Bimps.
The town cannot afford to look at Bimps.
Yeah, this is what happens. Then we suddenly Chinese fire drill X here or something. I don't know.
That's it, man.
But Flush, because I played with you in a game before where you subbed in, and you were a mafia in the game, and you provided content, and you were, and I suspected you because you were just doing like the work, but it was actual work. Like there wasn't a lot of fluff. And that was actually why I suspect you. So it's interesting for me to hear that these people suspected you for being fluffy, because mixing the fluff and like your natural style, because that's what I believe it is for you, like a natural style. And then with the other real content, like that just seems natural. That just seems like Flush to me. But I'm curious to get your own perspective on it and why you were miseliminated and yeah.
Well, like the criticism that, I wasn't really coming up with new conclusions is completely valid because I absolutely was not. Like my whole problem day 2 was that I came in and I kept trying to figure out, what was going on in the game because I was making reads, and one thing I was noticing is that I didn't have any partner reads. I couldn't.
This is what Times New Roman sounds like.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm sorry.
He deserves a promotion for that comment.
Dude, this is how our game went. We had a great time. We were laughing and joking, and the town was dying, and everything was cool.
If I posted in Comic Sans,
Except
I'd
maybe
be
that
alive.
last part. That last part wasn't so good, but
No, I'm sorry, Flush.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out what was going on with the game, and a lot of it was just me running my head into the wall over and over again, and I just couldn't figure it out. So, and in terms of like, the misvote on me, I think that it wasn't bad because I was always in the PoE there. Like, I said it in the thread that I think I'm just in this game to try and post my slot clear because I can't think of like anything else to add at this point. I can't figure out like where the mafia are. And that was just a lot of my day too.
Yeah. By that time, the town was all town. Everybody was town red by almost everybody.
Yeah.
And really, Flush was the one who was like, "There's something really wrong with that." Everybody else was kind of looking around like, "Gee, your town. Flush was the one that was saying, "Everybody is town, except they're not." And that kind of is what got him in trouble.
Yeah.
End of day was like 10, 20 minutes later, based on when Flush came back, saw that he had a huge wagon on him, and then both me and Aquilla were like, "Oh wait, this is town."
yeah,
I think if the day goes on 10, 20 minutes longer, Flush isn't the day 2 chop.
That's another thing that was like my fault.
Any length of time longer.
Yeah, I only checked in like 3 times on day 2, I think, and my 184 posts came between those 3 instances. So yeah,
I think with an extra 10, 15 minutes, I can convince people to see that Cave Lynch is better because it clears Flush.
Yeah, we get a
Have a
different
go.
bad chop.
Yeah, a different bad chop, but
An
one that
info chop at least.
yeah, but a
Oh,
different chop.
don't get me started on
Info.
info chops.
We learned so much that our reads were bad.
I'm gonna take credit here because I did come charging into EOD like 45 minutes before EOD and drop that little wall on Aquilla with my whole day of there's a wolf in the subs. I dropped that little wall, which was a worthless little wall, and was only really there to like maybe the next day I could be able to push on the subs real hard.
And then
all of a
TGT
sudden-
happened.
All of a sudden it was like, wow, these guys are gonna chop Flush right here and now. Okay.
I mean, it's a powerful
Alright.
and understandable plan to seed with a Mafia getting lynched, eliminated day 1, and 3 people subbing out. Like, well, there's at least one Mafia in
changes
there,
the
right? Yeah. All right, so we're already actually at the point where usually where we wrap up this
Yeah, keep
podcast,
going.
and
But we're only on like the
That's stuff
third
to talk
point of
about.
the
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah.
Started.
like
Two.
we're
We're not even halfway through. We've got
We're
Bimps is
not-
barely rolling along, man.
we
He's
are
just
yeah.
barely getting started.
I'm not stopping.
Yeah,
Don't
so
stop.
just so the chat knows, we're at 4 on an agenda of 10 items. So we are not
Don't
even
stop
halfway
it.
through. For my sake, we can continue for another half hour, not more than that. I don't know if anyone has
Oh,
to
yeah.
leave.
Yep, I've got
Yeah,
I
time.
can go. I can go about another half hour. Yeah.
No
Yeah,
problem.
half
I'm
hour
gonna
is
get
good.
mad eventually.
All right, but you can just drop out, of course, when you need to. But we can go for a
I'll
bit
just
more.
sub somebody else in.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
work
so-
the agenda as
Look for subs. There's got to be subs.
Somebody from the game's got to be. Just watch.
Hey, I mean, we were the longest game as well, so it might as well be the longest podcast too.
That's right.
Replace agendas 5 to 10 with Bimps play analysis. No, that's gonna take more than a half hour.
Yeah.
I don't think
Analysis
we've done-
by Bimps is not fast.
I mean,
But,
we could just we could just do the simple version. Nobody has any idea. Move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Case
Oh,
closed.
yeah. That's how it be. Yeah.
Oh, Bimps, don't play with your trumpet on stream. That's disgusting.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Let's talk about another miselimination, which was also a sight to see. The Francisco miselimination.
I'm still salty at that.
So let
Yeah, I
me
gave you guys one job.
Was not my fault, man.
like, even when the mafia says it's not my fault, like, come on, town, right? No. So let me set the stage for this. Francisco, representing
God.
Forms of Loathing,
Town red.
Francisco.
super
Town read.
super town red. He was locked in. He was chosen as that day's night kill. The mafia was gonna kill him. The town wouldn't have had to worry about him going forward.
And then
He-
I
there-
moved in. I moved in.
Then
I made
Bimps,
the big meme
Bimps
plays.
moved in and made the big meme play.
Someone else did it. I think it was Orange.
But yeah, Francisco did a weird gambit.
No, it was pretty much Francisco.
It was
There
Francisco.
was nobody else
Does
involved in
anyone
that,
have
really.
the post up?
Yup.
Because I don't. Okay.
Like a link.
It was like one before whatever our new word for Lilo is, and he threw out fake reads, and then like 10 minutes before end of day was like, by the way, my reads were fake, but I wouldn't have told you that if I was a wolf. So
And nobody cared about it. Nobody liked it.
So I can't remember who did anyone here vote for him out of the people on the stream.
Yeah.
think
Gone
I
for like 6 hours.
Jack and
course I
X.
did.
Yeah.
Echks did
Oh,
it.
oh,
Echks
so-
was a
oh,
hammer, I think.
So a lot of people here voted for him. All right. So
Aquilla
why?
Aquilla had gone to work. Aquilla had gone to work and
I've
left
been
us in
gone for
charge.
6 hours. I say, do JDS or something like that. I get off work like exactly at 9 o'clock. I check my phone. Francisco, the middle of town.
in fairness, the 2 counter wagons were also town.
Exactly. That's why I did it.
Yeah, and but
That's
Should
why
have
I
read
did it.
Tim's day 1 before.
best part of
and,
it
and
was,
then it's like I couldn't even do anything. It's like my the next day entrance is like so.
and I immediately said, I did my best, man. I don't know what went wrong with these people. They all just wanted to chop Francisco. It wasn't my fault. I got nothing to do with it. Don't know anything about it. Let's chop JDS again.
It just
And
seems
I,
so
and I, and
connected.
we,
So, like, if I'm almost clear and I got 2 chances or maybe 3 chances to get 2 people, I'm never spend the day making up reads. Like, I was like, I don't see
Yeah.
how
What
you could
that
do that
was.
from a town perspective.
We can't beat up Francisco because he's not here, but I
know.
do
Like, he
legitimately
played
a
not
good
know
game.
what that
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
I did not know what that was.
I
It
mean-
caught me completely by surprise, and I was really on top of what was going on most of the game, and I was still like, "What?
We're
what
still
is
confused.
happening?
So
What is happening here?"
so my take on
Yeah.
this.
that was weirder than Bimps.
Now,
My-
Yeah,
So to give my
Well,
take on
now-
this, like, I understand. Like, this is an example of actually relates to what Tim said earlier, right? The Mafia have more information than the town does. The town, they don't know anything, and they're in this paranoid game, and they don't have information on the other players that are still alive, unless they do because of mechanical reasons, but they don't here, right? So when you, and I guess, and this is also the question I have, is because the other wagons were town as well, so I'm guessing that played a big part here, right? You maybe in your mind are like, well, we don't have good wagons, and then this guy just comes and serves himself up. I mean, Jesus, I mean, this is just confusing, and we just, well, then screw it, let's do this. And I guess you can't ever, and that is the I guess the mistake of Francisco, right? You can't ever give that reason to players, no matter your alignment.
In Francisco's defense, the reason everybody was thinking we had all these bad wagons was because we really didn't have any. Nobody had any wolf reeds.
Yeah,
I certainly didn't have any, but nobody had any.
Wow.
So nobody was real happy with any of the wagons. And yeah, as soon as he like opened his mouth, it was like, well, he's a top town reed, but so is everybody else. Okay, chop him.
Fuck it.
But yeah, and also to defend friends, because you can't give that reason, because I mean, it's a two-way street. So he gave that reason, an easy excuse for people to vote him. He did. Like that's like, we know that, right? But at the same time, like, this is a championship game. I mean, does a Mafia do that in that spot? I don't think so.
Oh,
like,
of course not. No, not at all.
So like,
I didn't want to point that out at the time.
Yeah.
But no, that was pure paranoid, scared town, thinking there's no wolf reeds. Sooner or later, they're going to turn on me. I better do something. And boy, he did something. Not saying it was a good thing, but he did something.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
He played so well the whole game, and then like an hour before end of day, the FPS bug snuck its way into his head, and he couldn't get it out.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the power rules were all dead at that point. Somebody had to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Sunfan says, Tim sounds like he plays Mafia like he's on the run in real life. I'm not sure what that means. It's an interesting comment.
Who was that said that?
The Sunfan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, never mind. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about that in my upcoming book about bank robbing.
Make sure to bring the chart.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Echks do the math for me.
All right, you can have somebody.
All right, let's move on, because let's try to actually get through this agenda now that we've allotted more time to ourselves. Let's move on to the final five, because let's talk about the end of the game.
Yeah.
So what happens at final five? Aquilla was just a night kill. Posts happen. Jack correctly votes Tim. Tim immediately countervotes, and then Orange immediately misvotes. And unfortunately, we don't have Orange here, and I don't even think we have him in chat. He's been here before, so that's a shame, because I wanted to get his thoughts on this and have him here for the discussion, if we're gonna have a discussion on it. Because his vote, I do think, is such a shame. It's not the only time it's happened. There was also another game where someone insta-voted after seeing votes. Two people vote each other, and I think it's such a shame, because I think that's one of the most information-rich environments you're ever gonna have in Mafia, when you have a 1v1 Thunderdome. Like, the pressure's on, because you can see if the others aren't immediately hammering, then there's a Mafia in the two. At least one Mafia. It could also be both Mafia, right?
Pingu wasn't around.
So it's so valuable to look at the reactions after that's been established. But so I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on that, if you have any.
The thing there was that, I mean, even in Spec Chat immediately said, Jack just nailed Tim, has this wall, great case, blah, blah, blah. And he did. There's no question that he did. The thing is, everything in Jack's case against me applied to Orange.
Just about.
I had ridden side by side with Orange from day one. Every time we had to get off so the wagon didn't get too far ahead, every time we pulled a vote off to not let somebody get too close to an early majority, every time we talked about things that were good for the game, I talked the same thing as Orange. And when Jack made his case against me was exactly the same as his case against Orange. and Orange could look at it and say, well, I'm not a wolf.
Yeah.
So the case was bad. End of story.
Yeah.
There
So
was
like,
a little bit of difference there. Orange did a lot of what Rosen did day one, appealing to like, I suspect Shy. I'm gonna vote over here for Wagonomics. And I didn't see any of that, or I want a counter wagon. I didn't see a lot of that from Tim. I didn't feel like there was a pursuit of Wagonomics, a pursuit of let's gain something from this. I felt like it was more of a defense of Shy. But you're right, from Orange's perspective, it totally looked like the same BS. And so after I laid him out, I was like, I'm about 80% sure Tim's scum and maybe 60% sure on Orange. And so I was like, you guys, I'm gonna put the wolves on the spot. Who's the wolf team? And both of you said me, and I was like, bullshit. And then both of you said Pengu, who wasn't around, and so I said, bullshit. You two are the wolves.
Yeah.
That was wrong.
yeah, so that was wrong, but I guess what Tim is saying might be right. Like when Orange sees us, he's like, well, it's just like you might as well have voted me, right? So, and I guess another aspect of that, I'm not sure if that's the case, but there's also the value of voting quickly to gain more credit, because if he's in a sit and wait position, that could also seem scummy, right? And both as scum and mafia, you have to be aware of that. Because if he thinks, well, Jack's scum almost all the time here, so I'm just going to vote him right away to make sure that if it does go to final 3, then I'm well positioned there, or I'm killed and won't make it there. Because if he sits and wait, there's also like cons to that, right? So if he feels to read, then there's could also be value to just following right away.
Yeah, the timing of it made all the difference in the world, because Jack just said, gun to head, who's the mafia? And Orange said, well, you are.
Cross-posted. Oh.
And then he votes for me.
A townie and a wolf cross-posting the same gun to head.
Yeah,
wolf team at Lilo. God.
And Orange really had to say, I just said gun to head, you're the mafia. I can't just back out.
Yeah.
I gotta vote.
I was always going to take the vote shot. Like at Lilo, I was always going to be the first voter. But in hindsight, if I'm saying like my one big mistake at Lilo, it's not scum reading Orange. It is saying it was putting a gun to Orange's head and then immediately voting so that he's in the mindset.
You needed to let that cool off.
Yeah,
I
need to
let
wait
that cool off a little bit.
20 minutes, let him look at the case, then be like, this is what we're doing.
But here's
when he's in that mode.
Here's a question, actually, because this makes me think of this. Because in a Final 5, it is very rare that you will have all 3 townies agree on the exact 2 scum members. So whenever that doesn't happen and you have everyone posting their combinations and their guesses, you will have at least one townie be wrong. And if you're big on having people post those combos, your one townie is gonna set off another townie and create a false alarm. And is that optimal? Should maybe Final 5 not be more about just landing on one person and not being too focused on finding the combos?
See, that was my plan going into F5. I had posted the plan the day before of how we should do this. And it was, there's a wolf in Pengu and Bimps, and there's a wolf in the 3 of us, and we all town read each other. So that's going to be really hard. But what we need to do is just solve in those 2 and watch what we do. And we'll be able to tell who the wolf is over here by how we handle those 2. And I was thinking maybe Pengu can actually beat Bimps and we win. But if it goes wrong, then it's me, Orange, and Jack in the final 3. And I think it would have gone pretty much the same way. But I wanted to solve over there, and Jack was having none of that. Jack was not into that at all.
Best case scenario, we hit the wolf, and then I'm right back where we started. I'll take the hard thing now and go for the easy later.
I was kind of surprised by that, but I think I rolled with it.
Yeah, I think Pengu gets caught out of position. If we chop you, I think Pengu gets caught out of position. If we chop Pengu, I think you might be able to roll with it and still win. So I'm like, I want the hard wolf. I want the deep wolf now.
Yeah. So did I, but it was you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question, Tim? Did you ever have any like concern about the potential for Orange to notice that you were kind of trying to mirror him, and did you have a plan for if that happened?
Because of I wasn't really talking to him. I was just saying similar things. And I wasn't really worried too much about him like recognizing it or getting worried about it, because day one I've kind of pegged him as this is the guy that's going to lead the town. And all I really had to do was say town leadery things, and I would be saying the same things as him, and point out times when, hey, we need to get people off the main wagon. The main wagon's running away. And because he was leading the town, he kind of took responsibility for that kind of thing. And just the fact that I had mentioned it first didn't really register on him as changing. It wasn't like I was mirroring his reads. I was just doing the things he was doing. So no, I never really worried about it. The only one I worried about figuring that out was you, so I killed you.
Yeah, like my own personal perspective on that whole mirroring thing, it wasn't really anything that I had considered whenever Final 5 was happening, but looking at it in hindsight, knowing that this is what was happening, really the best play was to look at, okay, they're generally posting the same way. So from my perspective, that would mean there's never two wolves in Tim and Orange, ever. Because there's no way two wolves play exactly the same way.
Yeah, so, I agree.
So it was like, okay, where did that start? And how did they split off before that? Like, how did they play differently before they really tried to mirror each other? And then who tried to mirror who beyond that point?
And I think something you possibly could have brought up, Jack, was you would confirm town to yourself. When it came down to Final 5, I had already flipped at that point. So all three of the night one subs were confirmed town at that point. So if you would, I don't know if you did or not because I wasn't paying that close attention. If you brought up Tim's heavy mention towards pushing the night one subs, you could easily point to he's pushing for one Mafia in a group of 3. It doesn't even matter how he pushes it. He's just pushing a group of town as a whole towards potentially being mischopped.
Yeah, of course. I was actually kind of counting on that to chop Jack, because I was like, well, Aquilla's clear and Flush got cleared. Must be Jack. that was actually my final 3 close was we knew all along there was a wolf in the subs. We only got one left. Clearly,
yeah, I think
Orange,
Jack needed to turn that on its head potentially, because I think I pushed back against that day 4 specifically. Like when I started hard town reading Jack, it's like I almost flipped that, but
yeah, that's why I killed you too.
Making good kills, leading the town astray. It's always a good strat. Like Bunny Blue says, even if you sort through and solve, there's still a chance the other town will vote with you. And this is in Final 5, right? And in Lyle's situations, it's just like Lyle's just a diplomatic nightmare, at least when it's not when it's Final 5 and above, right? Because at the end you just need 2 people to vote, right? But it's just so difficult because you have to make reads, you have to make assumptions, and every time you make a wrong assumption, you risk causing the other town to suspect you. So, like, it would be very interesting to actually analyze a lot of Lilos and sort of make some general conclusions of that, because I think sometimes
I know I'm the new guy here, but I'm just going to say the key to winning at the end is to have planned it from the start. Because, like I said, the chop on a sub, I knew eventually I was going to get down to where there was only one sub left. And all of those other subs were going to flip green. So that sub, he's up against it when it comes to the end game, because now I'm going to push. We have wanted to chop a sub all along for a reason. He's the one.
Just a nice sub sandwich.
I was planning that F3 from day 2. And I was following Orange and getting Orange on my side from day 2 because the final 3 was going to be me and Orange and Jack.
Yep.
Jack, you were going to get chopped, bro.
It's
I wanna
chess.
get
You have
the
to.
You have to
really
plan
have
ahead.
to
Play
think
a
like
couple
4
moves
or
ahead.
5, 6 moves ahead to really get anything done the way you want it to.
For sure. A lot of respect for that. Moving on to a related subject. So essentially, the game is locked with Orange's misvote. Because now you just need the remaining Mafia member to hammer Pengu, right?
But
So...
Found that.
Yeah, Pengu.
but we've got a plan.
Yeah.
So Tim decides to out himself. But my question is, why do this? Because there is always the
Why
risk
not?
that Pengu doesn't log back on.
Why not? Pengu. What the town didn't know about Pengu was actually a lot more reliable than he appeared to be. Pengu checked in at about the same time every day. Did very little, but he was there at about the same time every day.
Bastard.
And I had no doubt that he was gonna show up.
So my
and
counter
I
argument,
really just
like
I really
I understand
just,
that, Tim. I understand that, Tim. But my counter argument is, like, you have to play for the percentages, and like you can't give that 1% away because stuff happens, like real life emergency happens. Like you had a lot of subs. Like you had a lot of subs. It was game prone to having
maybe Pengu
outside
would've had to
things.
sub out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Pengu, if his internet blew up or something, then it would have gone to a rand, and that would have sucked.
And so, like, I definitely think you need to play percentages because there have been a lot of situations.
I agree that was a mistake, but I really I couldn't figure out how I could sit in that thread.
Yeah.
So
I would have considered it a loss anyway. If Pengu had never showed up and we got the rand and I chopped Tim and final
it would have been a
like,
one
that's
only.
It was over.
No, we won.
We would have won only statistics. Most of us would have considered that a loss.
I won the entire game.
I personally think, Tim, that you should have stayed on it and had Bimps misvote as well, and had gotten even more credit for doing that as well, right? Getting more talent to misvote.
The thing is, Bimps was not going to misvote.
Yeah, it was.
I actually.
What's going through your head, Bimps?
I was.
I had no idea what you were doing.
Neither did I.
I kind of looked at what Bimps was saying in F5 and came to the sudden realization that Bimps actually knew what he was doing.
No,
and that was like
that was your first mistake, Tim.
That was the first time. That was the first time that I thought, man, this guy has been playing us all along. He actually knows what he's doing.
Jury, I think we need to consider maybe rescinding Tim's semifinal spot for very controversial takes.
Misread Tim.
He doesn't have say over Tim's spot.
No, I'm of course kidding, Tim, but that leads me to my next question, Bimps. And I'm not sure we can get a serious answer here because I would be surprised if we do. Because you're Bimps. But Bimps, what were you leaning in this final 5? Who were you leaning towards voting?
I was on the couch petting my dogs while talking in Final 5. I don't know. Probably Jack.
Probably
Jack. I said I was gonna fuck it up either way, so it didn't matter that
I had
Orange
you
fucked it up
convinced in
for
the
me.
moment, but I don't know if that was true.
No, I don't know. I didn't know then. I don't know now. I'm Mafia though, so I'm salad.
Was the game ever?
I was kind of burnt. And the idea of pushing Bimps the right direction, because Bimps doesn't push well. Like trying to push on Bimps is like trying to push on that blind horse he uses for an avatar. It's just going whatever direction it's going to go. There's no clue how it's going to turn out. And I was really, I admit I made a mistake there, but my justification is I was really tired by that point. It had been a long run.
The game was at that point where you really just wanted to be done with it at that point. It was really just taxing for everybody.
Yeah, that is the description.
So let's just.
I really didn't want to deal with being in the thread with Jack because Jack knew he was right.
And that wouldn't have helped matters with how he was playing.
Jack and I had already had a little run-in in the game, and I just didn't want to look that guy in the eye and say, "Nah, dude, you're just wrong." when he knew he was right.
And again, this brings me back to the point of I do think, and I guess Orange would have wished he'd done it as well now, right? That he would have waited with the vote and have waited to see how you guys interacted, because you are a new player, Tim, right? And I was very impressed, like more impressed than by many other players this season, right? But that was the situation I assume you haven't been in before, a 1v1 Thunderdome like that, or have you?
Actually, I had just in a home game, I had just been to Final 3.
Okay.
As a townie.
Yeah.
And been wrong.
Yeah.
So I had something to draw on as far as just how to be wrong-headed townie, and I think I could have carried it off if I had to.
So
it did just work.
So you would have had some experience, but having experience as Mafia in that pressured situation is definitely something would benefit you.
Pressure. As soon as the pressure was off is where I came apart.
Yeah.
When the pressure is on, I did okay.
Yeah. Well, then I guess you would have done well.
As soon as the orange vote was in, I decompressed. Is basically what it was. But you can ask Hollowcat about me flailing in the thread as a cornered wolf.
There's
got some experience.
Now that you mentioned Hollowcat, I believe there's a bet of some sort. I'm not sure if we should reference that or have it settled some way.
I haven't been watching the comments. Has anybody been talking about how old I am?
No, I don't think a lot.
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so.
Guys, do I look older than Hollowcat? Really?
I didn't see Hollowcat.
Get a picture of Hollowcat up.
he did the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Sunfan says yes.
Picture of what?
Hollowcat.
Hollowcat picture, Bimps.
I don't know who that is.
Roughly the same age, in my opinion.
I don't know.
I'm older than Tim.
I think it's very split, actually.
Yeah,
that's good.
It looks about 50-50.
Yeah,
that's good. I'm satisfied with that. That will win my bet with Hollowcat.
All right, awesome.
I got 20 years on Hollowcat.
That looks way younger than you, Tim.
Yeah, I think Bimps drawing might be younger than you though. I'm sorry.
Let me see that again, Bimps.
Okay, I'll draw it again.
Oh, you
don't have to draw it again, Bimps. Just show the drawing you already have.
No, I deleted it.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Samsung
yeah,
Note
that
10
looks
Plus.
younger than you. I'm sorry.
By now.
Cat years.
Oh, so you actually got 20 years on a Hollowcat?
Yeah.
All right, can't see that.
15.
15. All right. So let's just do this as a quick raise of the hand. Those who weren't in the final 5, who would have voted? Let's make this Tim versus Jack. Who would have voted Tim?
Can I leave before I get the answer here?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can take this answer.
I actually don't know.
If you claim that you were going to vote for me, we're going to know you're lying. Raise a foot.
It's an interesting perspective because, like, as soon as I died, my head stopped, like, paying attention to the game.
Yeah.
So I honestly don't know what my mindset would have changed into if it was exactly Jack versus Tim.
That is fair. So this
before Kave flipped, I would have been on Jack before Tim. Especially, but going into a final 5, if you're in live, you got to throw that all out the window. And I don't know if throwing that out the window would have caused me to be able to see some of the things.
No, there are no. These are just for fun. But it seems like Tim, you would have won that as well. Let's just conclude that.
I think so, but you don't know for sure.
Yeah, you of course don't know for sure. Let's again we're not going to get through this agenda, so I'm just going to skip to
skip to the fun parts.
I'm going to skip to the last part of the agenda and wrap it up with that because I think that'll be funny. What are some of your favorite or funniest moments from the game?
Mathwall.
Akron University, which Aquilla's from, which someone is telling me he knows him. Aquilla.
What?
Did you go to Akron University?
No.
God damn it. This guy was wrong.
Akron. Yes.
Akron.
I did go to Akron.
That was a Bimps read right there.
I heard Akron and I was thinking it starts with E, but no, I did go to Akron. Akron, yes.
I can't pronounce words.
That's a total Bimps read right there.
Yeah. But
funny moment.
Fun moments from the game.
Echks is
Liked when
Mathwell, yeah.
when I said that you had to be good to be staff.
Yeah, I
People
took
thought
extreme
that I was
exception
really
to
staff.
that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and the whole legend bit. It's like
The whole legend
Like,
thing.
I don't-
I did
like,
enjoy that.
yeah, it's
So-
like
so-
me, Jack, and Flush suddenly being legends of the game. It's like at least two of us are only mediocre at the game. You don't know what
Don't
to
say
think.
which two.
Well, I mean, you obviously know I included myself in that, but I'll leave the second part up to imagination.
Yeah,
Oh my
that was a good moment.
Yeah,
But
for
that's-
me personally, like I kind of turned my brain off after I died, so I never really saw or read most of the
Smooth
stuff in the
brain.
game. But the biggest thing I remember was after night 3, whenever Drago got killed. The first thing I thought was, "Oh my god, Jenny just got absolutely disrespected." Like, holy
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that.
And then
I
think
figured she would have her. I figured she would have her protect left. So I
Mhm,
was worried about getting tracked.
fair enough.
And she wasn't going to be a leader in the thread.
Yeah, because I mean,
it was reasonable to leave it.
when I
Yeah.
saw it, I was like, okay, yeah, Jenny's been a pretty low poster, so it's reasonable to expect that she wouldn't be the night kill. But at the same time, it was still like, wow, Jolt Power's being completely disregarded here. Like,
Yeah.
And
damn.
I think we had a long discussion about that as well. Like
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
theory
who
crafting
started
about.
that? Who started that conversation about who might
I
have done
definitely
that?
started that.
Well,
No,
I
it's
think
I didn't
did
say I wouldn't
actually,
have done
but-
that, but I think it was like there's some people who definitely wouldn't do that. Like Fran wouldn't have done that. I don't think X would have done
Tim
that.
wouldn't have done that.
I would
Would never
that.
do
I think I
that.
said that.
I think I said I would never do
Tim's
that. but I would've done
Tim's
that.
just in his
Yeah,
second
it's-
game
I
as
know
a
you
wolf.
would've
He'd
done it,
never do
Jack.
anything
Like,
like that.
It's like that applies to like me, Orange, Jack, maybe Tim, but I don't know Tim well enough. I think I had nailed it down to like those 4 people. One of us made the kill, and I was correct. I just didn't follow through with it.
Yeah.
And y'all don't know, but like 3 months prior, I had set myself up as a wolf to like mechanically win, mechanically here, town should vote no chop, and then I've got a way to mechanically win there. And Drago was in that game, and he was like, "No, we're not going no chop. We're chopping Jack." And I was the wolf, and so he beat me in Lilo there. So like, if I was the wolf, I'm killing him night 2 every time.
Yeah, because I
you go.
remember discussing with Pawn too that at one point we both agreed, and he had referenced that game specifically, that okay, Drago has the information on Jack and what Jack would potentially do here. So Drago dying there gave a lot of credence
that-
to
to Jack
Jack actually
potentially being
being the
Mafia.
wolf there.
Did
Yeah,
anyone
that
on the
fueled
Scum
Spec
team know
Chat.
that we knew each
Spec
other
Chat
then?
went with
No,
that.
I don't think they knew that.
Yeah,
but
because
it's like going back to that, Rosen, I think at that same thing is that I think Orange possibly could have done that as well if he was a wolf, because like you got to think here. Whoever does it has to do it on a person. Like Drago was almost the perfect person in that regard because he's town red, but he's not leading.
yeah,
So in the sense that it leaves all of the it enables somebody to shift into that town leader slot like Tim did without raising red flags.
For sure. Let's have a cliffs on the math stuff, just for those who didn't.
Oh, the math wall.
Yeah.
the
There is no
math
cliffs
wall.
of the math wall. The math
Wonderful.
wall is a solid entity that cannot be summarized.
You have to read
You
it
have
all
to-
its in
You have to
entirety.
Yeah,
look at the math wall in its
You have to check
entirety.
all the graphs.
Yeah, the
Check the
cliffs.
bar,
You
yeah.
still
all
haven't
of
done
that.
that, have you?
The
Stare.
cliffs
No.
on the
Huh?
wall
No.
is just the
No,
entire
I've-
page.
I've
You still
never read
haven't done that, have you?
I have stared intently at the math wall
We got it.
for a period of time.
Well, go for it, Tim. Read it.
No. I knew the math wall said somebody other than me was the wolf, and that was all I really needed to know.
I checked
Okay,
your mouth.
there
It's
you have
good.
Awesome. Well,
The
that's
math wall was a really good time to be a wolf, because if I'd have been a town person, I would have felt like compelled to read it.
That's how I should have known you were
As a
scum.
wolf. As a wolf. There it is. It's the math wall.
Oh my god.
Thanks for that. And thanks, guys. I think we have to wrap this up now because we've this is the longest podcast so far. It's
Good.
also
We're going 2 hours.
Just
Game
like our
10.
game.
Yeah.
also
Just like our game.
probably also the
We
funnest
didn't even
one so far.
finish.
Yeah. There you go, Bimps. Yeah.
I mean, I can go for another hour if you guys want
Yeah,
to.
I'd be down to keep going.
Okay.
Hey, I'm the top poster in the entire qualifiers. I can go as long as anybody.
That's because I had 6 hours of work. 2 days.
There you go.
And we
So
lost Fran because of it.
rip Fran.
It's all your
Uh,
job's fault.
It is.
Ha-
I gotta
Hail
send him a-
Bimps. Hail Tim. Rip Flush. Hail Mathwall. Thank you to all for joining me here on this podcast. Thank you to all of you for tuning in and writing in the chat. This was one of the more active ones. It was definitely, well, I guess I'll just go out and say the funnest podcast. Good group here, targeted group. We definitely didn't talk about all the stuff on the agenda. So yeah, maybe
Well,
we'll
we
have a
got an hour
reunion
before
podcast. And we have an hour before reveal. Don't forget, Lisa will be
Yeah.
revealing
Shit.
the semi-final picks.
Set aside
actually-
the next 5 hours, guys.
Yeah,
Actually-
yeah.
Great.
Actually, I guess I have to. Let's just talk about that very briefly. Very briefly. Does anyone? What do you guys? Do you think any of your co-competitors here, or do you are going to advance here? Or what are your expectations?
I've been pushing for Orange, Echks, and Bimps, and Flush.
I hope Rosen makes it.
I exist too, Tim.
And Rosen. Yes,
I'm open
I
for
pushed
Echs,
Rosen
yeah.
too.
It's if I do get picked for whatever reason, I will probably decline to host because I was promised a semifinal, and I'm gonna have issues with Manti if he doesn't let me.
And I guess with that, let's end this podcast the only way we can. Bimps, I will grant you the final words to close off this podcast. Use the time wisely.
Oh
He's
no!
gone.
What's he,
Ducked out of the
what's he
camera.
pulling out? Oh,
Oh,
No trumpet. No.
Oh.
and I guess
Very nice.
that sound.
That was the war cry of Bimps right there.
War cry of the town.
War cry of the town. I guess that sound signifies the end of the 11th episode of the Mafia Championship podcast. Again, it was a pleasure to have you all guys here for it. Thank you for showing up. Thank you to everyone in chat for showing up. And we will be back sometime next weekend, probably Sunday, but who knows, maybe Saturday, I don't know, to talk about Game 11, the last qualifier. And then after that is semifinals, baby. Of course.
Semifinals, baby.
Yeah. So don't miss the reveal. The reveal will be happening in the general discussion thread in the Mafia Universe Championship subforum thingy. So definitely be there for the reveal. It remains to be seen whether Lisa will be slow rolling like I usually do. So I guess
she will be.
she will be.
Like, she will be.
Guaranteed.
So,
Guaranteed, yeah.
Yeah.
so I guess
That's a given.
so I guess
I expect one reveal every 20 minutes.
so grab your
I don't
energy
know.
drinks. It's
Me
gonna
staying
be a
up
long
all
one.
night watching this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So thanks again, guys, and see you.
Thanks to you, Thingy.
Thanks,
Alright.
Thingy.